Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Not welcome back to Talk About Football. Welcome to TSF1, baby. Yeah. Party poppers in the background and everything when you edit it.
Do you want me to edit in sounds and all the rest of it at this point?
Yes, that would be great.
What about like a bigger rendition of Super Max so we can all just
maybe not. It's not the weekend for that. We're jumping straight in. We've decided, because we're obviously just absolutely hooers for content, that F1's kept us going in the summer, so we're going to make a wee podcast, talk about it, see how everyone enjoys it, because we've all become absolutely hooked. Which is mental, because about 2 years ago, none of us really watched it at all, and then we're all absolute experts, as you'll find out throughout the next 45 minutes or so. But we are on the back of the Austrian Grand Prix, where Charles Leclerc came out on top with a much-needed win in Sunday's feature race after Max won the sprint, which was interesting. We'll get everyone's thoughts. We'll get Ryan's thoughts on Max's performance, because if anyone's followed his Twitter, I
feel like we need to make like I think for the interest of all of our future viewers, where we're at a point where we're just starting, should we maybe give like a sort of a moment here just to say who we're biased towards, who we support, who we don't like, etc. Like very quickly. I mean, everybody knows that I'm a Max Verstappen mega fan. Like, I'm never going to be anything else. And you're a Ferrari man, David. I mean, the shot might give that away.
I would say so. Yeah.
What about you, Callum? Are you a Ferrari man as well? I keep forgetting. You're a kind of neutral, aren't you?
I think in terms of just for being a nice guy, I'd go towards Ricciardo for McLaren, but as an actual driver, I think I'd go for Perez, really.
Oh, Checo. Nice.
He's a nice man.
Carl's like that guy on the FIFA crowds that has, like, you know, the same guy that's always wearing different team tops.
But you know, you ever see that, like, I mean, off topics, just before we get into it, like, the amount of times at races, like, Ted Kravitz or somebody will be like, interviewing somebody, like, oh, are you here to support this weekend? They're like, Charles Leclerc understanding there and like full Mercedes merchandise. I'm like, well, you must have your teams confused there, pal. So
but like, I'm definitely gonna end up buying like a shirt of another team at some point. It's gonna happen. You know, that's the thing I kind of like about F1, because I'm enjoying it. But you know, I want Ferrari to win, and I want Leclerc to win, but I'm not that fussed. You know, it doesn't make me that sick when Max wins, although your Twitter does fucking get to me a little bit at times. It is what it is. It was a good race. I enjoyed it. I mean, a few people were saying they thought it was a bit boring, but I thought it was great, especially like the midfield battle was unbelievable. Strategy was interesting. Could Ferrari find a strategy? Because they fucked it up in the sprint race, Callum, with that. Because Sainz and Leclerc were fighting at the start of the sprint race that just gave it to Max. That was the thing. Could they on Sunday find the right formula? And it was clear from the start they had the pace. It was phenomenal, really.
Definitely. I think even you look back at obviously previous weeks as well, that has been the problem for Ferrari. It has been that tactical side of it. As they bring in, like Shadows in, went to pit, and then same with Sainz. Obviously, Sainz is very unfortunate in terms of the actual race, obviously, because it going to happen, but also we will lead on to that. But no, I think they got a lot more spot on yesterday as opposed to previous weeks.
Yeah, and Ryan, you've been loving the Ferrari fucking disaster classes in recent weeks, because Red Bull have been the kings of strategy for the most part this year, and Ferrari have not really managed that at all, but they did manage it.
That was a big difference yesterday in terms of Saturday. It looked as though there was maybe more pace in the Red Bull at points in the sprint. And yesterday, like, the pace in the Ferrari was wild. I think you seen Max Verstappen's reaction in the cool down room, as they call it, when they were waiting for the podiums. And he was shocked at the pace. And obviously there was a lot of problems with the DEG for Red Bull as well. They talked about that. Christian Horner was very open about that as well. But Ferrari got it spot on. And look, listen, if Carlos Sainz's car didn't explode into a million bits, then I think you would have been looking at a Ferrari 1-2. And that's the thing, it's not like I actively dislike Ferrari. I love Carlos Sainz. I really like Charles Leclerc as well. They deserved the points that they did get yesterday, and they should have got more. But it's one of those ones. When will these problems start to go away? Because for as much as it's good to get a race win, and they got that, and Charles needed that first time since the start of April, watching that car go up in flames again for Carlos, it must be a slight bit concerning for a Ferrari fan. Just a slight bit. I mean, they got less points this weekend than they did last weekend. I know everyone's delighted that Charles got the win, which is magic, and he needed the win for the championship race. I mean, it is just about still alive. 38 points is doable. It's a long shot, don't get me wrong, but it's doable. If Max had won this race, I think, you know, you're really struggling to find any kind of, you know, anything that's going to make you think Leclerc can still win the championship. But it's still wide open. But the crazy thing is that engine failure, it was definitely going to be a 1-2. I mean, Sainz was definitely going to overtake Verstappen with the pace they had. And that engine failure was like one of the scariest things. I mean, he goes off it. So is it turn 3? He goes up the hill to kind of go off track. But then he starts rolling back down the track. And the fucking car's on fire. It's like, just before turn 4, I think. I think he's ready to go around into the next turn. And like, that's what you're see, like, when you see the car rolling, I was like, oh my god, like, is he going to get...
And then it's on fire. And then the
Marshals didn't look as though they knew what they were doing as well. Like, they were like, should we pull him out? Should we leave him? And I made a joke on Twitter. I don't mean to be cruel, but I actually thought he was going to end up like Nicky Lauda for a second. I was like, what is going on here?
He was trying to get out of the car as it was rolling backwards, and the flames were building. There was a marshal that ran down and turned around halfway and fucked off. I think they thought it was going to blow up, which is what I think they thought was going to happen. But that is mental, and it is like, we talk about strategy for Ferrari, but reliability as well has killed them. And Bernardo said it was a similar issue to Azerbaijan. So whether they can fix that, I don't know. But you'd have thought by now they'd have had a handle on the engine. But
I think you've got to talk about as well for Ferrari towards the end of the race. And sorry to just like cut in, and I know Callum's probably got a lot to say as well. But one thing as well about Ferrari, I still want to know what was in the throttle at the end of the race. Like, they're keeping it secret. They're not telling it. Like, what could it be? Was it like a part of Charles's shoe? Was it a bit of dirt? Like what happened? To be fair, but it's like when I heard on the radio that apparently he was lifting the throttle with like the under. Did you hear the explanation? Like the commentators were giving, like it sounded as if he was like lifting the throttle with the top of his foot, like putting it under the pedal.
Yeah.
If that is the case for the last however many laps of the race that is very impressive from Charles Leclerc, to be fair. Very, very impressive to manage that. Because I thought when those radio messages started coming through, I was like, okay, that's a massive opportunity for Max. But Charles handled it really well.
He did. I mean, I don't know about you, Callum, but every time Leclerc radio popped up, I shat myself.
Oh no, most definitely. I think even more so because Sainz was out at that point. I think I'm right. Like they need somebody to bring home the points this weekend. It has to do it now. And then we kept up saying like throttle issues, like right, but what is it? And obviously, as the more went on, it came out. And we've seen it, but no, I think, as Ryan touched on, very impressive for him to still maintain that pace, keep up, and go into the podium.
He did fantastically, to be fair to him. And I think if he didn't like DNF there, I mean, Ferrari's season's just up in flames if he did not got that win. But Otto said he didn't watch the last 3 laps. I was struggling. It was tough. I'd like Sky Plus it and watched it after work, so it was all kind of second hand to me. But it was terrifying. But he managed to get the job done, and thank God, because he needed it. And you know what I was thinking there? I was watching the podium at the end, and we'll move into Red Bull now as we do this. But him and Max are obviously like quite pally, and they chat away. But Max and Lewis still nothing. No chat, nothing. No looks exchanged whatsoever. There is clearly no love lost there. But you said on Twitter you're pretty happy with the Max result for the weekend because it's good points. You know, it's the gap's slightly reduced, but not hugely.
No, it's a 27-point weekend, and obviously I was hoping for 34. That would have been nice, but he still took fastest lap. He managed to take first place in the sprint. I think the worst part about the weekend in general as a Red Bull fan, and from a Red Bull perspective, is the fact that Checo never got to finish the race. I mean, double points would have been nice. But look, in terms of Max's weekend, he done what he could, trying conditions. And as you said, like still 38 points clear at the moment with 6 wins this season. It's not the worst. It certainly could have been worse. And, you know, there was points where Max even came on the radio and stuff, and I was like, oh, this can't get any worse, can it? And then you look at Hamilton, who at the start of the race was making decent ground, and I think with all it's said and done and how the race went for Red Bull, it's a particularly good result. And obviously as a home race, you want the win, but look, the Orange Army, they made noise. I mean, it's the only time I'll ever back the Orange Army. It's the only time, but they made their noise, they turned up, and I think that Max was disappointed he never won, but it's generally quite good.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, the sprint race, Ferrari played into his hands in the sprint, didn't they? Because they were just fighting each other at the first corner, and it just allowed him to pull away. But yeah, I mean, you're coming back to it, like, Max is obviously a feisty wee fucker, but I think he was a bit pissed off with the strategy in terms of the tyres. They kept him on the hard tyres. Did he start on hards or mediums? I think he started on...
Oh God, you're asking a question there.
But I think there was a point. There was definitely a point where he wanted to go on to mediums, and they kept him on hards, and I don't think he was too happy with it.
There was, because he came on the radio and he was saying, like, why have we went with this tyre? I remember that standing out quite at a moment. But, like, you're right, because I think it didn't help the way the race went. I think there was a point where they were relying on maybe a safety car coming in at a certain point in the race to try
so evident,
try and give them a free pit stop, and obviously that never came when they wanted. Ferrari, for as bad as the strategy has been, and I know we've touched on it, they did get one over Red Bull with the strategy this weekend. I think that just things did not go the way that Max Verstappen would have wanted in terms of, you know, what pit stops and what tyres to be on, and we heard about the DEG, of course. So yeah, just on
pace, because I was looking at, obviously we all know Ferrari's got pace, but we didn't think it would have, in terms of straight line pace, it was smoking the Red Bull at the weekend. Now apparently in the last week or so they've made a change to their rear wing in terms of the DRS, and Bonotto says it's bottom about 0.2, which is a lot to find mid-season. So, teams are obviously still working on the cars, but it is mental how, like, such small margins and such tiny things can make such a difference. But, Max, decent weekend for him. Checo in the mud. It was not good. And wee George Callum is, not Ryan's favourite person just now. But George killed Checo, didn't he?
No, he did indeed. Also, it was quite annoying to see, but I think even just for like George's sake, I think that's him back to like the standards he was maintaining at the start of the season. Obviously back into fourth again, obviously just shy of third, but for him to sort of keep maintaining them and keeping those points coming from Mercedes fans will be loving it.
Yeah, Mercedes to me just now are like Chelsea in the Premier League last season. Like everyone knows that City and Liverpool are clear of them, but everyone's pretty sure they're going to be third, despite the fact they're probably not going to have enough to challenge. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about after last week. Could Lewis really start to challenge for race wins? I think Lewis will probably win a race this season, but I can't see him regularly challenging. They just don't seem to have that pace yet. And if they're both going to, ding the car out and fucking qualifying like they did this weekend, then they're going to have even more, tough fucking race weekends. But Russell, go on, tell us about Russell. Give it. Come on.
Well, do you want me to start on Russell? I was going to bring up something else.
Well, I know you've got things to say about Russell.
Ban him from Formula One. Ban him from Formula One. I am going to start a petition to ban him from. I cannot stand George Russell.
I quite like George Russell.
How though? He's such a we have a chick. We are three men sitting here talking about Formula One in the podcast. You could call us Tories at this moment in time. Well, obviously not. But he is like, if I was to draw a caricature of a conservative man, it's him. He's just such a wanker. Listen, he's a good driver. I'm not going to take that away from him. I made a video on my second channel a couple of weeks ago, and I said his season has been stupendous, and it still has been. I think every race he's finished this season, he's been in the top 5. The only time he hasn't was last week, when of course he DNF'd in the first lap of the race. Maybe could have went on to actually finish the race.
Out of the goodness of his heart, he DNF'd last week.
I don't care out of the goodness of his heart, right? He is honestly such a wee girl. I just do not like him. Yeah, that crash yesterday, right? That happens to him. You never hear the end of it. He understeers into Checo. He takes him out the race. He's done it before with Valtteri Bottas. What was that, like last season? 2 seasons ago? I can't remember. But he's done it with Bottas as well. And it just annoys me. He gets away with it. I hate him. That's
Russell last week was the height of compassionate conservatism last week, wasn't it? Him going out to help Bichon Guan Yu. But that was turned...
Listen, anybody would have done that. Anybody would have got in their car in that situation. You've literally just watched the most horrific crash of the season in front of your eyes. Obviously,
I don't know. Do you think Lewis would have got out? I don't think he would have done.
Yes, of course. Like everybody's going to bring up, Max never got out and seen if Lewis was okay at Monza. Who cares? Who cares? I don't care.
Yeah, I can tell you. It certainly looks like you don't care. Going with that we went there. What was going to come on to now? I fucking lost my train of thought.
I wanted to bring up a point.
Go
for it. We're on the topic of Mercedes, aren't we?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, Toto Wolff, he had a cry on Friday. He was very sort of backhanded in his comments about the floor situation, which of course has been the big topic surrounding the porpoising at Mercedes. And now the FIA are having a look over the floors, and there's going to be regulation changes, I think, starting from Belgium, about how floors are going to be on the cars, and if they've got to be certain sizes and fucking this, that, and the next thing. We all know, right? But it was very backhanded what he was saying. He thinks certain teams have exploited the rules in regards to how the floors are on the working on cars, basically implying that he thinks, without mentioning names, Red Bull and Ferrari have had flexible floors, which has meant they haven't suffered the same issues with porpoising and stuff like that. I don't get where he's coming from, and I don't mean this as a Red Bull fan trying to be all biased, but I just don't understand. They have worked around the regulations that were put in place from the start of the season, and it just so happens that Red Bull and Ferrari had a floor that may or may not have been a little more flexible than Mercedes, but they didn't go against any rules. I think they've investigated into it. Nothing's been found. They'll have to change it from Belgium onwards, which I'm sure they'll follow, but just because they haven't suffered the same issues as Mercedes, I don't get why Toto Wolff is being as dramatic as he is.
Yeah, but if this was flipped, Christian Horner would be bitching as well if it was flipped.
Yeah, of course.
If Ferrari and fucking Mercedes were flying and didn't have these issues, he'd be looking to move as well. Of course he would.
No, I understand that, right? But I just don't get why... I don't know, and I guess you're right. I guess if it was flipped 180, it would be the exact same situation. I'd probably say the same about Horner as well, because we all know what Christian Horner's like, right? But I don't know. He's acting as if like Red Bull and Ferrari have went out and cheated for the first half of the season when they worked around the regulations that were in place, and they'll continue to work alongside the regulations that are in place from Belgium onwards. So I don't really understand.
Mercedes, they seem to have fixed it as well, because it's not been an issue the last couple of races.
I'm
Anyway, on Toto
maybe
Wolff, I'm glad you brought him up, because I think he's fucking hilarious, right? I think he's just hilarious, right? Did you see it? The Mercedes social media guy on Instagram, right? He was basically running around Spielberg on the morning of the Grand Prix trying to find Toto Wolff, right, in the piss and rain, and he was running around like this campsite, knocking on caravan doors and all that, trying to find him. First one he knocks on is fucking Valtteri Bottas, and he gives him like a cup of coffee, and then he goes and knocks on the next one, random people, and then he knocks on like Toto Wolff's camper van's fucking door. He was staying in a camper van. How wild's that? And then Toto Wolff gives him like a Mercedes t-shirt, it's like a size small, and this is a big fella. And he basically just shuts the door and throws them out. It's quite funny. And he had his son there as well. He was cutting about like a wee legend as well. There's a wee cool video of him meeting all the drivers, which I thought was kind of cool. But the reason I brought that up is because the thing I love most about F1 is all the characters. Because see, like in football now, we always talk about how there's no characters left in the game. But see, in F1, there's fucking loads of them. Like every single team has got some sort of character you just think is funny or an arse or like something. There's something in every team to love. Yeah, so I just thought I'd bring that up because Toto Wolff is one of those guys that I just think is sick.
This might be a pointless question, but I'm going to go around all of us. I'll start with you, Calum. Who's your favourite character in the paddock? It might be a pointless question because I feel like there's a standout one, but who is your favourite character in the paddock, Cal?
Oh, I mean, there's certainly a fair few. I mean, if you want a fair wee laugh, you've got Yuki Tsunoda, who's...
He's an angry little man, isn't he?
He is. It's like, did you see what he put in his Instagram story?
No,
so when Alonso was getting past and he gave him like the finger wag, he was on with like the emoji, like saluting, like basically saying, right, that's fine, like a green room type thing. But yeah. I think Toto has to be up there. Just I just seen like the video.
It would have been Kimi last year, wouldn't it? Kimi runs away with it last year if he was still here.
You're missing out the obvious one though. Like, is nobody going to say Gunter Steiner?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I love how his ship's getting bigger for the more points Haas get. Like the ship gets bigger every single week. He's going to have a fucking cruise in a few weeks' time with the way they're going. But finally on Mercedes, it's something really interesting that I want to touch on because I don't know if any of you noticed that Bono wasn't there this weekend. Lewis he didn't have his main man, and he couldn't understand a word that the guy was saying in qualifying. And I could just tell that it was like if Lewis had a bad weekend, he'd have been moaning about it. But he got the podium in the end, so he's not too fast. But it was really weird.
It's funny you bring that up. Someone brought that up to, I can't remember if it was in Sky or one of the other broadcasters, but somebody brought that up to Toto Wolff in the paddock, and Toto at first did not make out a word of what they said, and they're like, "Oh, how is it without Bono in the in the team this weekend or whatever?" And he was like, "Who?" And I was like, "Is he thinking like Bono for you too or something?" I was like, "What's going on here?" But it's nice that it's nice to see how much he's missed by the team, even though I hate Lewis Hamilton as well.
Yeah, no hammer time though.
Why was he not the other weekend? Does anybody know? Sorry, I might ask.
No idea. There wasn't.
I don't know if it was Michael or no. I was wondering. I feel like wondering if anybody told it or such.
He's such a big part of the team though that I doubt he would. It must have been a big reason for him to be away.
Maybe he was the well.
But some of those guys are quite funny. They're fucking. What would you even call them? What's their actual job title? The radio guys. I mean, that's obviously not their name, but
they're just like team engineers, aren't they? I think
Right, we've done. Oh, have you got that there on Google? Have you?
No. So yeah, I've got it here. Rather than being on the site at the Red Bull Ring, Bonington was carrying out his usual role from the Mercedes base in Brackley, which meant that performance engineer Marcus Dudley was head of speaking to the 7-time world champion. So basically, he just never went to Austria and he carried on his job from Brackley at the weekend. Don't know why, but there you go.
Okay, fair enough. Right, let's move on to Alpine because we brought it up already. Fernando Alonso is just a goat, isn't he? I mean, what the fuck? The guy is just absolutely mental, and I love it. That wee finger wag was outstanding. And yeah, but the thing is about like Alonso is obviously such a talking point because he's like, he is one of the greats, and he's been flying, and obviously, where was it? He was second. Was it Canada? He was second in qualifying, and there was that big thing, could he catch Max the first corner? But Esteban Ocon is having a really quiet but decent season as well. And their pace has actually been really good all weekend. I think they were third and fourth in the final practice session at the weekend or something like that. They've had really good pace, Callum.
Definitely, I think I had that like my notes. That's why I keep looking away. I've got my phone here with my notes put into it. But again, as a little Ocon in P5, as an end total, I think that's phenomenal for him. I think obviously that puts them, I'm sure, level in constructors with McLaren now. I'm not too sure. I'm going to double check, but I feel like that's about right, roughly. Yeah. But then again, I mean, that's phenomenal for Alpine to have such a good car that they can keep like benefiting from and keep adding to. Like I think it was yesterday, and it was Will Buxton said, like, McLaren have said, right, that's us for the season. We won't be changing the car anymore unless obviously FIA like mandatory. But if Alpine can keep benefiting this, I think they'll leapfrog them again, the constructors, and continue to have a brilliant season.
Their boss guy was on there fucking talking to the commentary team at the weekend during like the sprint race and that, and he basically said that basically Alonso's got a lot of say in what they're changing in that car. But what about was it the sprint race or was it the race where they had the tyre blanket still on? What was
that? Was the race?
Was
it the sprint? Sorry. Well, one thing I want to touch on.
It was an electrical issue. It wasn't that they just forgot to take them off. They couldn't go.
I love how you referred to him as the boss guy, because what I was going to say is this is of course our first ever podcast doing this. We've done it. We're starting from the halfway point of the season, so we've not really got to predict things and say things. But one of the big predictions that I made for this season was the key thing that was going to change Alpine in their season was Otmar Safnauer. He was going to transform this team and take them in a very positive direction, and so far he's proven me 100% right. He is, I don't know, I can't understand why the backstage politics with him and Lawrence Stroll caused him to leave. See if Aston Martin
was he at Aston Martin?
He was the long time Force India Racing Point team principal, and when Lawrence Stroll took control of the team and it became Aston Martin, they basically had a very big difference in directional sort of where they wanted to go. And I think we've seen how that's benefited both teams now. Alpine are very much on the upwards kind of climb, and Aston Martin that are one of the poorest teams in the paddock at the moment. They're really bad. So I think, they'll be regretting that they got rid of him in the first place, but he's been mad. And one thing from yesterday as well, Alonso, from a pit lane start to P10.
Ah, wow, yeah.
He's my favourite of all time. He's always been my favourite. Like, back when I used to watch F1 like 10 years ago, say, he was always my guy, and no wonder. He's just unbelievable. From a pit lane to P10. With Blanca still getting taken off, as you just mentioned there, David. Unbelievable from him.
Yeah, I mean, and Bottas P11 from the back of the grid as well. Those guys both had a very good race. But yeah, I mean, Ocon was in fifth though. So I mean, like Alonso had a great race, obviously, but I mean, Ocon in fifth is fantastic. That's a great, for Alpine, it's a really good, really good end result. I'm all, this middle of the pack sort of battle is going to get. I mean, we saw it. There was a 5-car battle at one point. I think it was you. Who else was it? Alonso, Norris, Magnussen, and Schumacher. I think they were like 5 abreast coming out of turn 3, and it was just wild. I mean, that battle is going to heat up because those cars are so evenly matched now. I mean, the Haas. We'll come on to Haas next. Their straight line speed is like disgusting. I mean, what they were doing to Lewis Hamilton, he couldn't get rid of either of them. Now I know there was a DRS train and all that, but it took him ages to get past them in the sprint and in the race. He had so many issues, but Mick is now flying. He's gone from never having a points finish to having one last week, and now he's like an arrogant fucking thinks he's the best. He's just got shades of his old man, and it is beautiful to see. Quite frankly, I am loving every minute of it. I have to say.
Well, the thing is with Mick, you see his reaction to getting driver of the day yesterday. He was like, wow, I thought it should have been last week at Silverstone. Like, he was very honest in what he's saying. And he is growing in confidence now. I mean, P6 is his career high. Obviously building on his first points from last week. I think that his season is just going to get better and better and better from this point on. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talking about Mick's driving and how they're concerned about it and how they think that he's close to causing some sort of accident. I think yesterday Mick drove brilliantly, and the same with K-Mag. While we're on the topic of Haas, there was one point in the race, K-Mag, I'm sure it's K-Mag anyway, it might have been Mick, but I'm definitely sure it's K-Mag. He got like a double overtake. At one of the times.
Oh yeah. Mick was one of the people he overtook as well. He overtook Mick, and maybe it was Hamilton actually.
One of the best moves in the entire race, and that is, once again, we've not been here all season, so I feel like we're going to bring up stuff that's kind of irrelevant at this point. But K-Mag coming back to that team this season has been huge for them, and they've leapfrogged AlphaTauri in the standings, and I think they'll just keep going higher and higher.
Yeah, AlphaTauri are having a bit of a tough time of it just now. But yeah, that midfield battle is going to be fantastic. McLaren, obviously, I mean, Norris ends up in 7th, which given how things were going at the start of the weekend, he would have been very happy to take. And huge for Ricciardo to get points as well, because I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Ricciardo, because it's an interesting one. I tweeted it on Saturday, what has happened to Daniel Ricciardo. And Sunday was a good day for him because he needed points. I mean, just drastically. There's so much talk just now about, will he be there next year? Will he not? Will Buxton said something where people thought that he meant he wasn't going to be there, but I mean, he is. And I'm pretty sure McLaren have all but confirmed that he will be there next year. But he's gone from a guy who was at Red Bull and wanted to be, winning championships, or at least trying to now in a McLaren car that's not particularly fast. And his F1 career is kind of in jeopardy a little bit, Ryan, I would say.
Very much in jeopardy. Have you seen the news that Colin Herta is going to be test driving for McLaren this week, I think?
Today.
Is it today? There you go. Colin
In terms of
today. So he's going to be test driving for the McLaren boys today. I still don't think that... I know Otmar, sorry. I know that Zach Brown has came out and said that Daniel Ricciardo will be in the team next year. I still don't think there's a guarantee in that, and I think the paddock knows that.
But it's not a great car. It really is.
It's not a great car, but when you can't match the performances of Lando Norris, who's been driving for 6 years less than you, and you can't deliver on the expectations that you came in to try and set. Listen, I think that McLaren aren't going to progress as a team without moving on Daniel Ricciardo. That's my honest opinion. I think Daniel Ricciardo needs time away from the sport. I think Daniel Ricciardo needs time somewhere else. It's not working at McLaren. McLaren are a very ambitious team. They're trying to change their... Oh, there's my camera away. They're trying to change their direction. They're trying to do all these good things. And I think that Daniel Ricciardo is holding them back from that. That's my honest opinion.
But here's the thing, right? Obviously, I think that all they've said is that he just needs to start matching Lando on a more consistent basis, which is fair enough, right? But for the majority of this season, Russell has kind of been outshining Hamilton at Mercedes, but that doesn't mean George Russell's a better driver than Lewis Hamilton. Different cars suit different people, and different aspects of different cars suit different driving styles. I mean, Ricciardo's always been a better racer than he has been qualifier. We saw a little bit of that, and he did manage to sneak into the points on Sunday. But Callum, you're a big fan of DR, as am I. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, he's a good character. He's funny. He's got a mind of an absolute child at times, but we can't losing him from F1 would be a bit of a disaster for the sport in general, just because of the personality he has. If anything.
And definitely, I think it's, as you said, it's the character that he is. It's what he brings to it. Like, obviously, you can't really just say that he merits a seat because he's a funny guy. He does this. But the only thing I think also with Ryan saying for him to take a bit of time away. I mean, he turned 33 last week. Like, he can't really afford to take time away from it. I think if he was to step away,
look at Alonso. Alonso took time away from it.
I know, but you look at where Alonso was beforehand. Danny Rick's never quite been at that level. For it as much like also, I'm dying to still see him. Obviously, within this sport come the end of this year, obviously we're boxing at that wee slip up where it says, will we see him next year? But also we know he will be here. I think it's just in what capacity is a real question.
I mean, he's never going to win a world title now, whereas 7 years ago you'd have thought, and he would have thought he probably would have done, and now it's got away from him, which is a shame.
I keep making the same point when we talk about F1 on like Xbox parties. He didn't. I know that he was trying to be ambitious. He was trying to forge his own path. But leaving Red Bull to join Renault was the biggest mistake he could have ever made. And Heinz, obviously at the time, he spoke to Cyril, who was obviously the principal at the time, and he's seen good visions, and he thought, yeah, I'm going to go for this. But looking back, I know that he was maybe going to be second fiddle to Verstappen, but there's been times in the past where the second fiddle has managed to make a good go of it, and his confidence ever since leaving Red Bull has never been the same. I think that he'll forever secretly deep down regret that because... Well,
but I mean, if you go back to that time though. I mean, there was that. I mean, Red Bull were losing the Renault engine at that time. There was no guarantee Red Bull were going to be amazing for the next few years. And in fact, they weren't.
Yeah, that's what I mean. In hindsight, he'll be.
It's easy to say that now. Yeah, of course, you're right. But I mean, his time for a world championship was certainly gone. He's not going to go to a world championship level team and be the main guy. He could maybe go and be a number two. At a team, I'm not saying he's going to go back to Red Bull, but I mean, if an opening came up, he could be a number two at a team like that. But I mean, I can't see him now being someone that's going to challenge for a title, which is a shame. But I hope we don't lose him because I do love a bit of Daniel Rick, I have to say. Right, Aston Martin. Let's go through that quickly. I mean, the story for me is Seb because he had a fucking horrendous weekend. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. He crashed out multiple times. Guys were hitting into him. And I'm really worried that he's going to chuck it. I really am. He said this morning, there was a comment about if he's not winning races or challenging for championships, what's the point? Now, obviously, he's not going to do that in that car. So it feels a little bit like to me, is he going to be sitting in P20 every week and want to continue? I mean, why would he? He's not that kind of guy. And I fucking love Seb. I mean, he's just great. And it's just a shame to see him in such a shit car. That's my big thing, personally. Callum, what do you think?
No, definitely. I think I just said also because the heights we've seen him at before, as very annoying to see him in a car as poor as Aston Martin has been this season. I think one that I just said with him being frustrated and he said, well, what's the point if we're not out here challenging for points and challenging championships, was yesterday. It's apparently also it's just rumours also it was on Sky and such that all the drivers had a sort of they were all bickering back and forth.
Oh yeah, I heard of
the whole thing with their driving standards, basically.
€25,000 fine he's been given.
He's basically decided to piss them off. So he's been hit with, well, he's supposed to be getting hit with this fine. We'll wait and see what happens with it. But again, I think that follows on from him being in the mindset of, again, like, what's the point in this?
Yeah, that's what I think as well. I think he's just at the point now where he just can't really be fucked anymore, especially if he's going to be, down the bottom. I mean, it was P17, but he was everyone else below that DNF, so he was last place in terms of the ones that finished. I mean, Lance Stroll in the same car is finishing ahead of him now. I mean, this is what I come back to with different cars suiting different people and all the rest of it. I mean, that car is never going to be competitive for points in that, which is a bit of a shambles for him. It feels like if it wasn't for the fact that he's like a father figure to Mick on the track, I feel like that's the one thing that's kind of keeping him there just now, because that relationship they've got. I don't know if you saw the clip where someone had said, Mick had basically said that Seb was to him what Michael was to Seb, and he was getting a bit emotional with that. But there's a proper, mentoring there. That's probably one of the things, Ryan, that's kind of keeping him there, I would say, in terms of, keeping in that car and on the grid.
It's kind of cute. I mean, you've seen, obviously, Seb coming over. I think he asked Jamie a little, where did Mick finish when he was over?
Does that every week, yeah.
Last week. I does it every week. It's nice, and maybe it is one of those things that's keeping him in the grid, keeping him on the grid just now. But I kind of agree with you, David. I think his time is very, very limited, because this is the thing, right? Even if he was to leave Aston Martin, where does he go? Because there's no other team that I think is going to take Seb Vettel. I know he's a 4-time world champion, and usually you'd snap at that opportunity. But you look at the grid just now, most teams are set for the next few years. Teams are looking at the likes of Oscar Piastri, McLaren are looking at the likes of Colin Herta. Is there a place for Seb Vettel to go anywhere else? And if he's not wanting to be at the back of the grid, I think that his days, even with Mick being around, are very limited. Yeah,
I think him and Fernando seem quite different, and Fernando seems to love the dog fighting and being a bit of a wind-up merchant and fighting in the middle of the pack. But I mean, Seb's not even in the middle of the pack. That's the sad thing about it. He really is struggling. So yeah, I think I got a feeling it could be his last season. I don't know what his contract is, but it wouldn't surprise me if he just chucked it anyway. But we'll have to see. Let's move on to Williams now. I mean, Alex Albon had a decent weekend. I mean, he finished in 12th, right? Obviously outside the points, but he had a reasonable weekend in terms of that car's not great, and he's pushing it. He's doing quite well in it compared to Latifi, who's just the worst driver in the history of the sport. I mean, this is definitely his last season in F1. Fuck me. If he makes the end of the season, I'll be surprised. What's the point? If you're Nicholas Latifi now, surely for your own well-being, you just chuck it, because it can't be fun.
Well, I think the problem is now that with Williams, they were looking like they'd get Oscar Piastri, but then I think Oscar is now holding out, waiting to see if that McLaren space becomes available. So who knows? Maybe he would have been a Williams driver by now. Maybe Latifi would have been gone. But you're right. They're digging themselves further into the ground for a team who are meant to be kind of going in a completely different direction from what the Williams family had them in. I forgot his name now. It's just slipped my head. The head man of Williams. It's honestly just slipped from my mind completely. But he's came in, he's wanted to transform the team, he's trying to get away with a lot of the old tradition stuff at Williams, and they should be making this one big move, which is get rid of Latifi. I know he's a pay driver, I know that there's a situation there that will probably cost the team some money, but you can't hold yourself back with a guy who's getting you 0 points every single week. He's not even finishing races. He done well at Silverstone, fair enough, that was good, but he's not built off that this week, so you're right.
I mean, Alex Albon's not great, but he's so much better than Latifi. It's so clear. Speaking of Albon, Callum, he was a feisty fucker in that race. I mean, he went into fucking Vettel. He went into who else was it? He went into? Was it Norris? He went into. He got a penalty. I think he got a 5-second penalty for into Norris. I mean, he had the elbows out in that race. To be fair to him,
I know, definitely did. I think it was almost envisionments where a couple of years ago, also when he was in the Red Bull car with Perez and Russell, as they're both going round that same turn and bang, it clips the tyre. I was sort of waiting for an arm moment like that for him, but do you know what I mean? For him to get that car up into 12th, it is good for him. Also, it's a shame. Also, there's no points for that. But I think the big problem for Williams is definitely Latifi. I think would be very surprised if he does finish the season out. Also, do still have a long way to go. But I think, as Ryan touched on, it's a case of who takes that seat.
See, the thing is about Williams as well, this weekend was the weekend, I think, with the biggest changes to the car yet. I think it was the aero change, or the chassis change, can't remember, that came in, and it's Albon showed it can be competitive. If they add a second competitive driver in, who knows what direction they could go in, but they're not going to get there with Latifi.
No, it doesn't look that way at all, does it really? Right, a couple of teams. AlphaTauri will cover quickly. We spoke about Tsunoda. So I haven't read this article, but did you see the article that went around last week that was basically slagging him off for being an angry wee man?
Is this the thing about the psychologist?
Yeah, so I mean, it seemed to cause a bit of controversy. I'll be honest, I didn't pay too much attention. But then the first thing I heard in qualifying when I switched it on was him screaming down the radio. So he's obviously an angry wee man, Callum. But I don't know. I know he's kind of cute at the same time. So it's a bit like, what do you do?
No, I think obviously we've seen it obviously in glimpses, even like last season, when he has had like those rage moments. I think it also has just continued on. I think the rest of this season is going to be very interesting for him to see where he can push like himself and the car alongside Pierre Gasly. Obviously, I mean, Gasly a couple of years ago we see him in a Red Bull car. You think you'd like to see him pushing back up for it again, but
Yeah,
the way this season's going, I've not got much confidence.
people have still got high hopes for Gasly. He's obviously still young enough, and I think he will get back to a big team at some point. But I don't know whether it's going to happen anytime soon. But AlphaTauri have not had. I mean, recently they've come off the boil a little bit, whereas like Haas have kind of been flying. So they're still in that midfield battle. I mean, who knows what changes they can still make to the car? But I mean, you've got Haas, you've got AlphaTauri, you've got Alpine, McLaren. Yeah, probably. They're probably the four that are kind of in that battle for that sort of fourth spot behind Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But and Alfa Romeo, Zhou Guanyu just miraculously was even on the track this week after last week, because I thought he was dead, to be honest, as I think we probably all fucking did. That was an absolute mental
I shouldn't be smiling. I cracked a smile there when you said he should have been dead. Just to clarify, it was just the way you hit it. I wasn't actually laughing at the thought.
I mean, like 5 years ago, he probably would have been dead if it wasn't for the halo. So it's remarkable that he got out of that okay, which is good to see. Right, let's move on to a kind of more general topic that I want to cover from the weekend. And I'll come to you in a minute because I know you've got stuff to cover, Ryan. But this is one thing that was a huge talking point. Track limits, fucking black and white. It was like a fucking Dunfermline game with the amount of black and white flags that were out. It was sensational, to be fair. But penalties everywhere, warnings everywhere. And it was the same in F2. I watched about the F2 in the morning. I don't know what it is. Someone said it's to do with the cars and like they can't quite see the white lines.
Well, apparently
because the wheel arches apparently are bigger.
Yeah, I think it's the mud flaps or the wheel covers, whatever the technical name is for them. I think that apparently because they've obviously been
it's surely not mud flaps.
Mud flaps.
maybe on a mountain bike, but I don't think it's.
Whatever the technical name is for them, right? The wheel covers are apparently obstructing the view from fully seeing the white line. So when they come round these corners and when they try and get round, and like it doesn't look as though the full wheel is over the line because the cover hides away the edge of it. But like I'm going to be completely honest. Austria obviously has been the kind of standout this season for it, and that's we've seen that the amount of flags as you said yesterday. But at the end of the day, every other track has been the same. They've managed to handle it, and it's just about adapting. I don't.
Yeah, it's just turn 9 and 10 at Austria. So fucking when you come into that final straight, I mean, it's so easy to go off to get a better racing line. I did. There was part. I mean, Charles got 2 early warnings. I was a bit worried that might cost him. Max got a couple as well. I think they were both on the last warning by the end of it. And I was thinking, Christ, please don't let this decide the race. And there was a bit after the race where they both got. Well, Charles initially got called in to see the stewards, and then Max, but it was something to do with the not going into the cool or not going to get waged straight away or something like that. But anyway, immediately I kind of thought, oh, Christ, we're going to take the one off him. But no, it seemed to be a bit of a nightmare. But as you say, I mean, it's the same on every track. It just seems that Austria was catching them out, a lot more than kind of the others. Have I got anything else here I want to cover? Oh, and the fans. The fans were obviously a bit naughty. The Orange Army, your pals, Ryan, they were
listen.
Pretty rude, apparently.
Let's not start accusing members of the Orange Army for being the ones that were causing havoc. It could have been anyone in the F1 paddock, to be quite.
To be honest, a big group of Orangemen in July causing havoc is not a fucking first. So, it's just surprised that it's not happened in Glasgow and Ireland. It's happened in Austria. But yeah, anything else to add, Ryan, on that? Defend your people.
Listen, I think that we've all heard the likes of Lewis Hamilton and such come out and condemn the behaviour of the fans at Austria this weekend, and it's very shit to hear, to be quite honest. The amount of I think there was accusations of racism, sexism.
I think women were getting it tight that were over there, which is just a shit.
There was a couple of harassment cases. I think I believe there was like a woman that had visited Lewis Hamilton. But I don't know. It's great, but anyway, people go to F1, and I think Lewis Hamilton put it best. And I don't usually quote Lewis Hamilton, but Lewis Hamilton said that people go to these races at the weekend to relieve anxiety in their lives and to have fun. They should not be going to these races to be antagonised by other members in the crowd for supporting certain teams, wearing certain clothes. It's a bit embarrassing, and hopefully the F1 and the FIA or whoever is in charge of this over in the Austrian Grand Prix course and the Red Bull Ring will get to the bottom of it and find out who deserves to be prosecuted, because it's embarrassing.
Yeah, and it comes with the increased popularity of the sport. You're going to get a few more fucking rascals in. I mean, look at us three now starting the podcast. But I mean, it's going to happen when the sport gets increased popularity. But yeah, not great, not great. And probably the one kind of sour note from the weekend. Anyway, for Simons, you've got a couple of things you want to bring up. I've got one thing I'll leave to the end, but I'll let you take it from here.
Right, okay, so I've got a couple of things that I'd like to touch on. A couple of them we already actually did, because I wanted to talk about Total Wolf's comments on the floor and the regulation changes there, and we've done that, so that's good. Bernie Ecclestone, he is in hot water. He's not had a good couple of weeks, Bernie.
Hot water would probably kill him now.
I'm starting to think that the family of Bernie Ecclestone should start looking into some homes, because he is not doing well. So basically, BBC reports Formula 1 boss Bernie Ecclestone will be charged with fraud by false representation following an investigation into overseas assets believed to be worth more than £400 million. The Crown Prosecution Service said the charge follows an investigation by the HMRC, and the CPS has authorised a charge against Bernard Ecclestone. It is in respect of his failure to declare the HMRC or the existence of assets held overseas believed to be in worth of excess of £400 million. Now, I don't know where these assets are, but last month, Bernie, old Bernard here, decided to take a trip on to Good Morning Britain, where, we all seen his comments. No? So his quotes were, what was it, Putin is a top-class guy, and he would take a bullet for him in the middle of the Ukrainian and Russian conflict. I think that this is a point in time where everybody should now have a bit of concern for old 91-year-old Bernard.
When you said he went on Good Morning Britain, I think you were telling me he pumped Lorraine Kelly or something like that. But
no, he just came out and said how he thought Putin was a top-class guy and that he would take a bullet for him. No. I wonder if Putin will help him with his £400 million.
So this is not the first time that Bernie Ecclestone's got himself in hot water with a political leader. So in the late 90s, he and Tony Blair were really pally, and there was something to do with like a ban on or tax on tobacco advertising. And at that time, F1 had loads of tobacco advertising.
Yeah, a lot of Marlboro.
Apparently they were exempt, and there was a big scandal there. So he's got friends in high places, Mr. Ecclestone. And a great name as well,
It is some name, to be fair. It is some name.
Yeah, but he's a bit of a... You never really see him as much now. I remember like when I used to watch F1 back in the day, you'd always see him in like the grid every week. And I know he's 91, right? I know, he's obviously probably not as, fit and firing as he used to be. But yeah, he seems like a bit of a dodgy character. But yeah, we'll move on from there. Another thing, speaking of the grid, and it was something that was obviously post-match, and I know, Ryan, you were obsessed with him. What about wee Wilbur? Wee Wilbur. Just the highlight of the weekend. For anyone who's not seen this, Ted's Notebook on Sky Sports F1 on Sunday night, he was cutting about and he saw a dog, and he thought it was a sniffer dog, but it wasn't. It was just someone's pet dog. But what type of dog was it again?
Do you think Ted had any reason to fear that it was a sniffer dog?
Ted's punting after hours.
No, can we just for a moment, just in this podcast, can we establish from this point on, I don't know, Callum, I think you agree, I think you watch it, but Ted Kravitz is the most lovable man in the entire paddock.
Yeah. Gus Fring was a nice guy that gave to charity and had a chicken shop. So you never know what you're getting, do you? Really?
Yeah, you never know. But I love Ted, absolutely love him. That dog will, but I don't know what kind of dog it actually is. Somebody needs to tell me because I want him. I
just assumed it was a doodle. It's the size it.
Some sort of doodle.
A doodle of a dog.
Yeah, but even guys like Ted Kravitz and that, I said it with characters early on, like the presenters and the pundits and that on F1 are fantastic too. You got to love it. Crofty's just a great commentator.
Yeah, I think
Martin Brundle's one of the absolute goats of sports reporting.
I never watched the Channel 4 coverage when Silverstone was on last week because I think the Sky... we obviously do a Scottish football podcast where we constantly slate the coverage that Sky Sports gives us. But in regards to F1, the coverage is fantastic. I think it's really good. It's really good. They've got it spot on, and it's well worth the money for that in that case. Ted Kravitz alone is worth it.
Yes, he's a great guy, to be fair. See the one when he was in Miami, when he was running down the escalators that were going up the way? That was vintage television. The way he directs the cameraman around. So like his cameraman, he walked in front of someone else's interview, and they gave him a telling off and made him go out and apologise. It was fucking brilliant, to be fair. So yeah, good characters. Twitter, loads of questions have poured on Twitter, by the way, and more than we would get for a football podcast. Do
you want me to go through my tweet?
Yeah. Give us a selection. How long have we been recording for?
We're currently at 45. So if we just Twitter questions, finish up the show, I think that'll take us to a nice sort of an opening time for the first episode.
Oh, that'll do me. Right.
Okay, right.
We'll go back to work, so you know what I'm saying?
First thing, what time do you start back?
5:30.
Okay, we'll fire through these as quickly as possible. Adam, the lad, he's got the first question. He says, "What is your favourite ever F1 car? And if you were to have 2 drivers from any era to drive it, who would they be and why?"
Oh, Jesus, well,
that sounds like an episode within itself.
It does, doesn't it? It's like building a fantasy team, isn't it?
So, like, the most, like, imperious car I think of was Lewis's car was it the W10 from, like, 2019? The 2020 car? Yeah. The really dark Mercedes car that was just an absolute monster. That in terms of a car was probably the most, like, fucking complete thing I can remember seeing. And who would I have driving it? Latifi for the shits and giggles. What would he be like in a great car? That's what I want to know. Would he be amazing? Would he be middle of the pack, or would he still be dog shit? That's what I want to know. That'd be a great thing to see.
Right, okay, what about you, Calum? Have you got any
I don't know, I feel like David's really... He's hit the car in the head straight away. I think the W10 was just a ridiculous car all round. I mean, I don't really see much else that we could really see, I think, in a couple of years that will challenge that.
The colour of it was fantastic because it was the really dark grey and it just looked fucking so slick. Loved it, to be fair.
I think drivers and all, but it would be brilliant to see a really shit driver in it just to see how that perform. Like, imagine putting Mazepin in that. You put Mazepin in that car and you see what happens.
He's got in the wall. I mean, very early on, I would imagine. He wouldn't be used to having that sort of power, underneath his feet. But right, Ryan, you've obviously been googling types of cars there, so come on, give us it.
No, I'm
he
just.
He definitely has, and if he tries and denies it,
I'm like, do you know what car I really love though? And I'm going for looks rather than performance. And I couldn't tell you the actual name of the car for the life of me. But like, you know how you get RB80 and blah blah blah. I couldn't tell you because it was a bit before my time as well. But the car that I love is. Do you remember like the chrome McLarens? Back, like,
the chrome and red.
Yeah, chrome and red McLaren. I don't know why. Bring them back. I love them. That would be the car I'd go for, just purely out of looks, because I thought they were just gorgeous cars. But if I was to
why did McLaren change colour? I've never really understood that.
Because new ownership, new branding, new direction, etc. They're trying to unify all their divisions. Keep in mind, they've got their off-road division, their fucking blah 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 division. They've got all these, and they're trying to make them all look the same. So they've went with the orange and blue as their colour palette now. But what I was going to say was. For my 2 drivers, very easy for me, Verstappen and Alonso, because I think that would be the most, remember that clip from Drive to Survive where Christian Horner's like, to drive for Red Bull, you have to have a fuck you attitude. They are the 2 most fuck you drivers that you could ever ask for.
It's just going to be carnage, though. It's going to be like Vettel and Webber, but worse. It's going to be Hamilton and Rosberg. It's going to be horrific. I mean, they're going to absolutely deprive each other of a championship.
No, absolutely not. They would be brilliant.
So you took in peak Alonso and Prime Max. Who's Horner's golden child? It's probably still Max, I think.
Still Max. It's absolutely still Max, isn't it? Right, anyway, we'll move on to the next question. So who will win the French Grand Prix, asked Jordan Gray, and why will it be Mick Schumacher? Calum, I'll start with you again. Who do you think, early predictions, who do you think you can see taking the French Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time?
I don't know. Certainly no signs. I mean, he'll be fucked because they'll need to put new engine parts on, so that'll be more penalties for him. Actually, I'd like to see Charles going there.
I think Charles will do it.
I've got a bad feeling that a Mercedes win is coming sometime soon. But I'm going to go with Max because
I can't unless Charles has another disaster in terms of engines, or I just think I think the pace that they seem to have found. If they can sort out the reliability and the strategy, I think he should be alright for this one too. And then imagine he'll have quite a bit of a crowd behind him. I would have thought. I know he's technically from Monaco, but that's the most annoying thing. Seeing the podium, right? So it's great when Ferrari win because you get the Italian national anthem, which is amazing. But I'd have loved the French national anthem as well because that's another absolute topper.
Well, it's a shame he's not from France. Matthew Duff has asked
if literally what I just said, mate.
If everyone had equal cars for a weekend, what 3 drivers would get on the podium?
Max, Charles, Lewis.
Do you think so? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Max and Lewis definitely. I don't know if I'd say Charles though.
So he going Fernando or someone like that?
Nah, I don't know. Valtteri Bottas.
Nah.
Just a random throw.
What was Seb in this Red Bull?
Maybe, but I don't know. You're probably right. It is probably just Max, Charles, and Lewis, isn't it?
The current front 3.
The current front 3. It would make sense. Okay. Callum, who do you think Daniel Ricciardo and Latifi's replacements will be if McLaren and Williams decide to get rid of them?
We touched on that earlier, didn't we, Derry? So I've kind of covered that on a large scale. I think I would like...
I just want Paul di Resta back. I want back a chance to...
Fuck Paul di Resta.
We need a Scottish driver in the grid rapid so that we can get him on here.
Well, Callum, hurry up do your driving lessons and you can take one of the seats.
Yeah,
I think that
myself, but
I think that Piastri's definitely getting one of the seats. I think that's certain. But I don't know which one, and I don't know who else will come up or come
Nico Hülkenberg.
I'd like to see Nico back in a seat. To be fair,
I mean, he did well on his one drive this year, didn't he?
2 drives.
2 was it 2? Oh, it was 2. Right. Did he get points? I'm sure he did all right.
No, 0 points.
Did he not do okay? No, I'm sure he did okay.
I think he drove okay, but I mean, what can you do in that Aston Martin anyway? It's not as if Seb's done much fucking better.
Yeah, I don't think Seb has done better. I think that's actually one of the things I think I read.
So Kieran Auld, he's in the comments. He says, "Do cars indeed go vroom?"
Yes, but like a continuous vroom. So not like vroom vroom, just like vroom the whole way through.
Yes.
So it's not like vroom vroom. It's like vroom.
Vroom Vroom by Charlie XCX. What a tune, by the way. Right, let's try and get through a couple more very quickly. I'm trying to see. Ian Hamilton asks a very interesting question because for a long time, up until Silverstone, I actually agreed with Ian. After this weekend, is it only a matter of time before we see Sainz dumped by Ferrari? He thinks for Schumacher and eventually dumping Leclerc. I don't think Leclerc will ever get dumped. No, absolutely not. But up until Silverstone, I don't. It depends how the rest of this season goes as well. I don't think Sainz has a long future at Ferrari. Up until Silverstone, I was very much under the impression he's not good enough for Ferrari, to be quite honest.
I think that the fact that he DNF'd this weekend has helped Charles, and that I think they will now prioritise Charles in terms of strategy. Whereas I think if Sainz was second, I don't think they would have committed to doing that just yet. No, I don't know. I mean, now he's got the monkey off the back with that win. He was cruising for a second place finish. So he's obviously in a decent bit of form. He's got a car with good pace. I don't really see any reason to change him. I mean, he's he seems like a good team player when he needs to be.
Do you think, Callum, that Sainz is the best potential partner? Leclerc's got a long contract at Ferrari, not like Sainz, but do you think that Sainz is the perfect partner for Charles Leclerc?
For the time being, just now, yes. But I mean, they've just given him a 2-year contract. Like at the start of the season, they'll realize a couple of weeks in, he gets a new 2-year deal. So they obviously do see him to see out the rest of the season. I don't really agree with the part with Schumacher. I mean, he's only just started getting points in the last 2 weekends. He's got another couple of years before he'll see himself in a Ferrari.
If it wasn't for the fact that it is Mick Schumacher, we wouldn't be saying a Haas driver who's only got points twice would be taking a Ferrari seat anytime soon.
I think if anybody, I don't think they'll get rid of Sainz anytime soon. I still, up until Silverstone, I love him. I absolutely adore him. He's one of my favourite drivers in the grid. Maybe my second or third favourite driver in the grid. Right? But up until last week, I was very much under the impression that they needed someone better because he wasn't as reliable. And do you know who I was thinking? Because of the Ferrari links, I was thinking that Bottas could be a fantastic option for Ferrari because he's part Alfa Romeo. He could maybe go there, but I think Sainz will be there for the next year or two anyway.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to change either of the top 2 teams for any time. To be honest, either the top 3. I think the top 3 will be pretty set in the ways for the next 2-3 years.
He started avoiding the gravel. He started avoiding the gravel a lot more. So
yeah, and he's won a race now, so that's a big thing too.
Yeah. Okay, McGinley, he's in there as well. We're getting all the TSF. Kennedy's in here as well. They've kind of asked a similar sort of question. McGinley said, as a novice looking to potentially get into F1, where's a good place to start?
Drive to Survive.
And Adam Kennedy asked, Drive to Survive, is it decent? Needs something new to watch, and it's tempting.
If you've never watched F1 before, start that and then watch the race the week after next. That's the way to do it if you've never seen it before. I used to watch F1 loads when I was younger, and for years I didn't. And then I watched Drive to Survive, and I was like, shit, I love that so much. I'm going to watch it again.
Very similar situation. Callum, I think you were a Drive to Survive man as well, weren't you? That's how you got into it.
It was Mackenzie that got me started into it, because I just finished watching All or Nothing. He said, you should watch that. It's exactly the same, but it's for F1. I said, I've never really cared for F1, but again, I was in the same situation as Kennedy. Needed something to watch, and I thought, you know what, fuck it, we'll stick it on. It was fantastic. So I went for there. That's me about a year and a half watching it now, and it's phenomenal.
Just interesting, Spunkphone replied to that McGinley's thing, saying that you should watch YouTube crash compilations.
Yes.
We're getting Spunkphone on here, by the way. I'm putting that out
absolutely.
Right now.
We'll definitely have him on. But one thing I wanted to say, a lot of the F1 purists do not like Drive to Survive, and I can get that, understand that. It's very dramatised, a lot of it is kind of made up and blah blah blah, but it is cracking television, and they're lying if they say they don't enjoy it, because it's good to watch, it's fun to watch, and it's boomed. the one thing that Liberty done when they bought over Formula One, their main priority was to establish a North American audience. They needed to make F1 bigger in America. It's fucking huge in America now. We have 3 races in America alone starting next year. Liberty have done a fantastic job in grabbing the attention of the American audience. So it's working.
And we've now got a point-scoring American team.
Yeah, they have. So, and final question that I'm going to ask for today before we wrap up is from Spunkphone, who says, when are you getting me on to complain about how F1 isn't dangerous enough these days? Now, can I just say very quickly, before you guys reply here, I've been starting this gimmick on the Xbox recently where I'm going to start a movement for #ban the Halo. I think that the Halo should be banned. I think that we should bring back the days where, there was more risk.
Yeah, but listen, right, we need to make this point right now. We are very much assuming that a lot of our audience is going to follow us over here to watch this. We're not really, we could get just random F1 fans from across the globe watching this thinking, who is that fucking maniac? And why does he want drivers to die? But people are not going to. There's your camera away. They'll also be wondering, why does his camera disappear every half hour?
I've ordered a new camera and it's still not here. Don't blame me, blame Jessup's.
Well. That's the.
I'm not serious when I say ban the Halo, but no, I'm joking. But it's funny. It's just it's a joke.
Well, okay, right. There goes the casual. The new audience is just gone already. So where are we next? We're in France next, the Paul Ricard circuit, which is a really good Grand Prix. I really like that one. The last few corners are fast as fuck, which is great. And then we are. Is it Spa and then the break, or the break then Spa?
Yeah, I think it's a double header with
Belgium. Is it?
I don't know.
No, I feel like Belgium's after the break. Is it not?
Well, the French Grand Prix
I would have thought it would be.
Oh no, wait, we're wrong. It's actually the French Grand Prix on the 24th of July, and then that's followed by a double. It's a double header, but it's not Belgium. It's the Hungaroring on the 31st of July.
Belgium is after the break, aye.
Yeah, Belgium is after the mid-season break. Yes,
okay.
There you go. So we have a double header coming up. There you go.
Nice. Okay, it's really interesting. If Charles wins one of these and gets a podium in the other, then we're gonna have a really great second half of the season, and it's gonna be really interesting. I would love a Max DNF on one of these just to really spice it up.
Well, let's just calm down now.
It would spice it up for a phenomenal set.
I don't want it to be spiced up.
We've not really had an incident between the two of them yet that's been controversial this season, and I think the closer that it gets, if it does get closer, we're going to see one. That dive down into turn 4 for the overtake yesterday was an outstanding bit of driving, and I kind of thought Max would maybe stick the elbows out. He didn't, but if that gap closes down, it's going to happen. And
nothing, just an incident.
Just an incident. Just an incident. Yeah. Love it.
Right. That's us then.
That's us. That 45 minutes lasted well. In future, we'll try and keep them snappier, but obviously it's the first one, so we wanted to just go for it. We're just doing this for a laugh, really, because we want to talk about F1. So if you like it, like, subscribe, and all the rest of it. And yeah, adios, amigos.